So Keshe, in one of your teaching, you said every curvature, every hole, every cavity in your body has a magnetic field, magnev, that interact with the universe. And actually, talking about the bone, in a spongy bone, there's a matrix of a spongy bone. When you look at it, because of all the matrix, the distance between all those little cavities, the way it's created, create this magnetic field that each of these cavities function for the absorption of the calcium phosphor to come to the bone. And then the engineering world had used that matrix.
The spongy bit is the export part.
Yes, but you know, the world of engineering used that matrix to build buildings around the world that uses the same field for stability of the buildings. So
we all learn from nature.
So it means that everything that in our body that we see, every like every deviation, like even if you look at the wrist, it has the pattern of the bone is not uniform, is very ununiform.
Every bone in the body of the man creates a marrow according to what is needed to be used. We see this, I explained this in part of the teaching somewhere. We see the ribs. The ribs produce a specific bone marrow which is needed by lung primarily. And they produce, but if it goes in at the raw state, if you break a rib bone and the rib bone which creates the bone marrow for the lung, and it penetrates the lung and is not converted to what is supposed to be to reach for the continuous use of the immune system fields of the lung, it's a poison to the lung and it can kill you. What is there to help the operation of it, if it interacts with the lung, the same bone marrow creates an infection with a combination of the calcium of it that it can kill you. Many people in a car accidents or in accidents which the rib breaks and penetrates the lung, the lung is totally not freed and the bone stays in touch or within the structure of the lung. People die within 6 to 12 months from that infection. What is there to create life, it becomes a poison because it hasn't been transferred to the plasma conditions in a strength which hasn't received conversion. At the end of our bones, all these what we call chewable parts are part of the extraction of the fields for our heart and for our lung to create a condition, magnetic field of that the lung can operate and disinfect itself continuously. This is the purpose of the cage we have, that we put a lung in there, a continuous disinfectant area. In the digestion system, we don't need that. We are more free of it, because the acids created there in the physical matter of what we consume does that. But if you look at it, it's the same. It's the same with our skull. Our skull continuously creates a field plasma of a bone marrow of itself. Because of its shape, we don't see the bone marrow, but it creates that field. That field protects the brain from receiving infections. We have the same thing in our hip. If you cut the hip bone, you still see marrows. It's for keeping the reproduction organs totally continuously disinfected, or in operation of the field strength. Some of the bones are totally continuously in immune production system. There is nothing else. They just continuously create immune field system energies that it create a plasmatic disinfection. This is what I told you. You do the same thing with the viruses. We're not teaching something which is not. This is exactly how things operate in the body of the man. We create a clean environment. We put maggrav systems and different systems that creates that condition of the cage. Your bone marrow does not need to come out of it to be used to go to a cell. It creates it, and in its environment creates a field which keeps the lung disinfectant and keeps the operation of it. Some of it at its ends are fed in and become part of and everything else. If you look at your ribs, the shape of them, where are they connected? How are they connected? What do they produce? What do they feed? What are they connected to your spine? Look at the shape of the shape of every vertebral disc. Not connected, but produces a massive magnetic field to contain it. If you look at your spinal cord and your spine, you actually got a tokamak. It's a reversal tokamak. It holds the magnetic field, the energy field of. If you look at your spinal cord, and if you look at your discs in it, this here is a massive plasma transformation both ways. Your bone is, your discs are massive containment tokamak to keep this field inside. It doesn't leak outside, and it goes through where it's supposed to go. And then when you see what is converted to what we call discs here, it's the same thing, but without the calcium, but allowing field flow that the nerves can break through. The difference between the magnetic gravitational field of these two allows the cavity for the nerve systems to come. It's not just coincidental. It's taken billions of years to generate the fields to the right way that it creates a cavity for the nerve system to flow between the discs. The information doesn't get lost. You live in the body of the man in a plasmatic condition. And even these discs create their own bone marrow to create the fields that can contain the information going down and up through the channels. Otherwise, all these leaks, when the information comes from the brain or from the organ, is gone somewhere. If you look at it, you have a one circulation of CERN, as you want to call it, but in a straight column. You have to be able, these vertebrae, the bone marrow, or the, in fact, neurosystem, is a communication line system. And you have to hold it as a high speed cable. And for it not to lose any, body has created, okay, we need a vertebra to be standing up to have a shape, but body has used as a containment field flow. And then if you change slightly the position of the one or the other, you have problem with the disc and the nerves and the rest of it. The physicality of the man is very simple if you look at it from the magnetic, gravitational point, but all of it, not just where you choose. Every bone in the body of the man, doesn't matter if it's the wrist or is it the leg or the toes, all create a magnetic field. If you even look at the shape of the bones in your foot, everything has a specific positioning to make sure, more or less, the work of it is to keep one neurosystem in, that it keeps the physicality in balance. If you look in if you look at the foot of the man, I'm not a very good drawer, whatever fingers you have, and the toes, There is one neurosystem which goes through it. And the whole operation of all your bones in your body, more or less, is to keep this nerve in line. That's all it is there for. Part of it because you walk on it. But this nerve touches, your life changes. If this nerve moves a micromillimeter, you have all the pains and all the operations you go through. The structure of the foot, when you look at it, the shape of it, your bone and everything else is all, 99% of it is to keep this nerve in a straight line. Because this nerve controls your upright position. In your body, you have two control of the positioning. One is on the bottom of your foot and two in your ear, inner ear. This balances this for the head, which is for the soul not to move too much, and this one controls the physical upright position. If you move this slightly, you find all pains and problems. And many of you have been with me, I do this quite frequently. If you're walking, your ladies, with your summer shoes and you move this, slightly gets caught by the table, this moves from here to here, then you have all the back pains and then the shoulder pains and everything, because this nerve has moved. The operation of all these bones you carry is to create a magnetic field that this line stays in its position. And how this line stays in position, the shape and the size of it, decides the characteristics of your height, your physical feature, your physical dimension. This nerve at the bottom of the foot, this, because if you cannot support it, you cannot have it. The size of the breast, the size of your buttocks, all decided by this strength of this nerve. Because it's a balancer. You put a weight in the front, I put a weight in the back, I create a balance. This nerve adjusts. And then all the little tiny little bones which you have in your foot is to correct all the motions of this leg, because all these in fact are connected to your verticality. This is to control there because it's for the liver and the breast. This is for the buttocks and that. If something happens, you fall on the ground, something happens, this moves slightly to keep you upright. The physical structure of the man and the diversion and conversion of the fields in the bone marrow state for every bone is partially to create that fields that lead to controlling neurosystems and information transfer and upright position. Many of you women, especially with your high heels, if you look when you're walking with the high heels and you change the position in your foot, you twist your ankle. Why? Because you have moved in the shoe and the position of it than being like this. It does what happened to correct itself. It has to twist one point, and that's why you bend your knees. No, sorry, twist your ankles, because this nerve is moved. This nerve has to find a position. Why don't we see people walking straight going through this? If somebody walks and goes through a straight and twists the ankle, maybe because of the change of surface, because this cannot control. But if this is removed, if it's this position with your toe moving, you find you get the twist in your ankle, you get the pain in your ankle, then sciatic nerve and everything else goes up. Everything has to adjust, because this tiny little nerve is the controller of all your physical structure. The other part of it, in the inner ear, is more or less is for your brain and your soul. This protects itself, this protects itself. This is the soul and this is for physicality. And people who lose their foot, this nerve goes to diversion in a pinpoint accuracy to the end of the nerve which was connected. Then it becomes very hard. That's why with amputation we cannot walk. If in the future the scientists can develop the system that this nerve at the end of the amputation becomes flat like this, you can still hop with one leg as normal, because that will create a balance. Everything is understanding the principle of it, not just what we've been told to accept. The shape of the dome of your foot, your toes, all is more or less to protect that. And as I was explaining to a knowledge seeker recently, when you look at the what do you call it, your fingers are the path to the universe. You absorb energy to it much faster. This is what it needs to come. And then your bones and the fields in them decide how, what is needed to be converted. You give the same out from it, pinpointed. This is why when you look at your skull, the fields is in 3-dimensional. Goes everywhere. With your fingers is pointed, a specific strength. When you look at the finger of a woman or a man or a child, you can tell the characters what it is, in what energy they receive. Why do women wear nail varnishes and they put this false nail on their finger? Because they hide, but in fact they cannot. The body will still receive it, but they hide their true character. Because when you look at a toe, when you look at the shape of a nail, when you look at the shape of a finger, it gives you every indication about the characteristics of the person. It's the fields they absorb and the fields they give. I can give you many examples. Our body converts these energies to emotion, to fields, to protection, to protecting the physicality. The shape of a nose, the shape of the ear, everything. When you look at the person, you know what you got in your hand. If you understand the source of creation, what energies they absorb. Why do the Chinese have a specific characteristics, and why do the North European have different characteristics? And these things I've explained in many teachings. Why do the Chinese believe in yin and yang? Because the skull structure is too small, and they had to face the reality of continuously analyzing which is the reality, because they see two visions. If you look at a Chinese television, I've explained this before, if you look at the eye of a Chinese person, one is here and the other one is here. Or when this one moves to this position, this one moves to this position. So the brain receives two images and has to recognize which one is more real and what combination of the two can accept. It's continuously judgmental. When you face an European or outside China, mainly because the skull is bigger, when you look at the eyes, it's centralized. So the brain, instead of spending energy to recognize, it confirms that both pictures are real, can be used. So energy is used for different things and becomes more materialistic. The position of the eye creates the behavior, and it's cultural. Just go on the television. I lived in China for 2 years and I always watch this. Even the speech, the talk is different. When you look at a Chinese man or a woman, by looking at their eyes when they move, you know who you're dealing with, how much recognition of the truth is within them. They call it yin and yang. They have to find a balance. Creates a culture. We all think the same because we don't always trust, but because we have to trust one, we do the other one, we create the two. But the Western Europeans with a broader head, the brain sits exactly in the right position to look. Then man becomes more materialistic. It believes in what he sees. This is why we have the terminology in the West. To believe it, to see it, to believe it. A lot of our culture as a race comes from the position of our eyes. What we see, in what angles we see, in what colors we see the images through our eyes. And then all these need to be created by the skull to be able to understand and control the field in what you see. If you take the skull of a man and this is the eye, and you change, I'm going to draw it in two ways that you can see it, and you create a, take this skull away and create a gap in here, the vision changes. The man perception of everything changes. Take this out and put a platinum here, which happens in most accidents. Or take the brain part out. You see the emotion and everything change, because now the information is not the way it used to be from the beginning that the brain was built upon. Because the magnetic field within the structure of the bone marrow of the bone of the head is changed now. It has a different physical field dimension. The emotion changes, everything changes. The vision changes. Because now this has to be focused in a different way that the rest of the brain is not geared up to. That's why the back head injuries creates blindness. Because you change this according to the information which you're set up to convey and convert. You change the pressure. And that is because the bone marrow was set inside the skull to hold that, because that's how it can create and control the soul, maintaining the physical structure of the brain. People who have a brain operation, their character totally changes. Because it's not that they move the brain, they touch the containment. This containment, it changes. You made a hole in it, not different fields come in. We see this in the birth of new children. The top of the head is soft because the brain is still developing, the structure is still creating different fields to allow and accommodate the growth and the field interaction and what can be held by the soul. We got to understand the truth, otherwise we carry on with the same fallacy. We are a bunch of magnetic fields of different strength with different behavior, which makes our bone, our flesh, and our behavior, and our psychology, and our soul. But in principle, all of us fit within the certain bracket of the magnetic field, which is the amino acid of the man. Everything else is attachment to it. And each attachment is limited to what it is. As I said before, the body of the man has every element on this planet because he has used it for a purpose or other to make itself more efficient. We find in the body of the man the most rare earth materials we never knew existed. But this within body of man, if we exist on this planet, is being added or being connected to the amino acid somewhere. What is conversion has to pass the amino acid. When you look at the bone marrow, when you look at the bone structure, in your bone marrow, everything is decided to be produced. On the top of the bone, what they call the spongy part, now dictates, this is now common denominator. Again the same, you look at the fluffiness, it has a certain gap. And the same. You remember the way it came in with different size holes? Now different size holes goes out. This has become a red cell, this become your immune system and the rest of it. Then we understand the totality of the creation. And all these are nanomaterials which control what the strength goes through them and what they need to add by the field strength to go, because their own structure is decided by the bone marrow when it was created. Preset. When you have a chemo, you block this or you change this so you don't receive. This is why we say people who have a hip operation, they create what is known fatty liver and fatty heart, because now this is gone. There's other part of the bone which is on the other end in the knee. Now all this doesn't have the processing and it has to come out as amino acids fat, getting sucked out. Is produced, has to be used, habit of the body of the man, stores things. So it's created, one day might be used. So deposit around the heart, around the liver. When you have a fatty liver or fatty cells, look at the function of the bone and the bone marrow, nowhere else. Because that's where the fat comes from, that's where the protein was produced. And the body stores. It might need it one day. We see fatty liver, fatty heart, fatty kidneys were mainly people who have had a hip operation. But the top of the bone of the femur has been cut. That's the reason. Has nowhere to go, but the body continuously produces on its length. So comes, has not got the right filtering to go out. So what it does as a raw material comes out. They haven't touched the physical part of the bone, they just took the top off. It extrudes coming in and extrudes going out according to field strength. There is a part of the bone which has no holes, it's just like a strings, which plays a vibration for what to come in this part. Now we understand the technology, the frequency on that bandwidth. When I tell you that when you have a masks like G5 or whatever, this is what your own body plays a frequency for what to come in. Now you're adding that frequency from outside, which interferes with what can come in. And then you see the effects of it through the bone marrow. Depends what that frequency will tune into in your body. And it's usually done in a bone marrow, in a bone structure conversion. Very seldom we see the interaction with, unless they create a massive vibration within the cell structure of the plasma of the tissues. It's the same with the virus, but that covers the entirety of the structure of a cell. I carry the knowledge of the universe and be seen many different ways. Never been to a medical school and never touched anything in that dimension. I created it, I know how, and understand the way. And if you add to the same thing, if you understand the same thing, then you understand how emotion is created. The creation of emotion is extension of your amino acid bone marrow. But there it gets converted to another dimension. Any other question?